Bill Clinton was born William Jefferson Blythe, but took his stepfather's name as a teenager. Clinton's ancestry can be traced back on his mother's side to King Henry III, who ruled England from 1227 to 1272. He is descended from King Robert of France. The Bible talks about the kings of this world, and we're thinking, no kings around, it's all democracies. Well, if you do a little study, this is the Wikipedia list, but it's taken from quite good sources as I can see. These presidents all were royal. And that includes George Washington. He was related to Edward III of England. Thomas Jefferson, Madison, Quincy, all the way down. Good grief, every single one of them are royalty. Did you know that both the candidates standing in the present election are royal? Both of them? That's rather interesting. So let's have a look at this Honorable Order of the Bath. It is awarded in recognition of conspicuous service to the Crown. Now that sounds so innocuous, but who is the Crown? We've studied that now. The Crown is the Knights Templars' crown, because it was offered there in the temple of the Knights Templars, and it belongs to Rome. So all of these are knights of the Holy Roman Empire, serving as Knights Templars in either the central or the outer or whatever committee. Fascinating. Knighthood and honors, what Americans have been honored by Britain recently. Recent American recipients of honor include former New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. That's interesting. Doesn't he speak in Canada a lot? The newspapers have been quite full of him. And film director Steven Spielberg. I wonder what he's doing to further the kingdom of the Templars. The Knights Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, former Presidents George Bush, Ronald Reagan, Honorary Knights Grand Cross of the Honorable Order of the Bath, Generals Norman Schwarzkopf, Colin Powell, Honorary Knights Commanders of the Most Honorable Order of the Bath, Caspar Weinberger, Honorary Knight Grand Cross of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, the New York Police Commissioner, Bernard, etc., etc., etc. Isn't this interesting? Here are all these knights. And a knight is a military man. And who is he fighting for? And what are we doing in Iraq? And what are we doing here? And what are we doing there? Come on. America is a sovereign, independent nation. A free nation that broke the yoke. And it is the finest Protestant nation that has ever existed. And that is true. And this is where the Protestant bastion of the world came to be situated. But let's look at something which could be considered the greatest deception of our times. Here is an article written by Michael Edward about the ecclesiastical commonwealth. The Crown Temple by rule of Mystery Babylon. The governmental and judicial systems within the United States of America at both federal and local state levels is owned by the Crown, which is a private foreign power. Before jumping to conclusions about the Queen of England or the royal families, Britain owning the USA, this is a different crown and is fully exposed and explained below. So we're not going to go into all this. I can leave this for those who are watching the DVD to pause it and read it for themselves. Now, the legal system, the judiciary of the USA, is controlled by the Crown Temple from the independent and sovereign city of London. In fact, London is the financial hub of the world. It is the city of the Jesuits. Therefore, it is the city of the Templars. The private Federal Reserve System, which issues fiat US federal notes, is financially owned and controlled by the Crown from Switzerland. The home and legal origin of the charters of the United Nations. So the whole of the United Nations is a Crown Charter. And International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, and the Bank of International Settlements. It's a real eye-opener to know that the Middle Inn of the Crown Templars has publicly acknowledged that there were at least 5 Templar bar attorneys under the solemn oath only to the Crown who signed what was alleged to be an American Declaration of Independence. Now this is fascinating. This is history. This simply means that both parties to the Declaration Agreement were of the same origin. The Crown Temple. In case you don't understand the importance of this, there is no international agreement or treaty that will ever be honored or will ever have any lawful effect when the same party signs as both the first and the second parties. That's like you selling your house to yourself. The Crown cannot sign on behalf of the Crown to the Crown. That makes no sense. It's merely a worthless piece of paper with no lawful authority when both sides to any agreement are actually the same. In reality, the American Declaration of Independence was nothing more than an internal memo of the Crown Temple made amongst its private members. Americans were fooled into believing that the legal Crown colonies comprised New England were independent nation-states, but they never were nor are today. They were and are still colonies of the Crown Temple through letters, patent, and charters. All of these names are important. Who have no legal authority to be independent from the rule and order of the Crown Temple. Fascinating stuff. So it appears as if there is independence, and really there is none. They're all dependent and subject to the Crown, but not the Crown of Britain, because Britain doesn't own the Crown. A legal state is a Crown Temple colony. To have this declaration recognized by international treaty and law, and in order to establish new legal Crown entity of the incorporated United States Middle Templar, King George III agreed to the Treaty of Paris, September the 3rd, 1783, between the Crown of Great Britain and the said United States. Doesn't belong to Great Britain. The Crown of Great Britain legally was then and now the Crown Temple. This formally gave the international recognition to the corporate United States, the new Crown States. So, very interesting. Most important is to be known who the actual signatories of the Treaty of Paris were. Take particular note to the abbreviation Esquire following their names, as this legally signifies officers of the King's Court, which we now know were Templar courts or Crown courts. The Crown was represented in signature by David Hartley, Esquire. Now, an esquire is a shield bearer for a knight. So he's acting on behalf of a knight, an esquire, the shield bearer of a knight. A Middle Templar of the King's Court representing the United States, a Crown franchise by signature, was John Adams, Esquire, Benjamin Franklin, Esquire, John Jay, Esquire. So the Crown was transferring regality on loan to the Crown. And since that day, the rule has been by the Crown Templars. And that's why they're all of this family. So what is happening in the world and all these votings and all these things really doesn't mean very much. I don't have to go through the whole history. I think you can understand the legal implications. Might well call the rule of the world today by many names. You can call it the New World Order if you like. That's what the Bush family favorite is. You can call it the Third Way, as Tony Blair and Bill Clinton called it. You'll call it the Illuminates, the Triad, the Triangle, the Trinity, the Masonry, the United Nations if you like. You can call it the EU, you can call it the US, you can call it whatever you like. They're all Crown. Fascinating. Because the Pope created the Order of the Temple Knights, the Grand Wizard of Deception, and established their mighty Temple Church in the sovereign city of London, it is the Pope and his Roman capitals who control the world. Now, this man seems to know what he's talking about. So the Crown, the royals, the church, all the churches in the world and the nations are subject to Rome and not subject to the Queen. And the Anglican Church is not subject to the Queen. And when the Pope went and visited, he showed by kneeling at Thomas Becket's place, now I have achieved what this war was all about from the beginning. And so this Queen has had to come dressed in black, the color of a liege, a subservient one, a vassal to the Pope. Here she is with Pope John Paul II, dressed in black. She's the Queen of the Bilderbergers. Here she is, dressed in black. Seems to be her favorite color when she visits the Pope. Huh? Interesting. Here is the Princess of Wales, also dressed in black. Here she is, dressed in black with the Pope. This was the private audience in the Vatican. It's interesting that Diana, the unfulfilled princess, a short phrase from that same Panorama interview, overlooked by many people, she said, the reason for the surprise interview with the magazine Panorama was they wanted to put me away. I'm not going to go into those details. Let's not go there. So Lord Runcie speaks his mind. When the Pope was there, Runcie was the Archbishop, remember? Archbishop said, I hope I can persuade the church to loosen its strays a bit and perhaps rock the boat a little. The Christian voice must be loud and clear on the great political issues of the time, race relations, unemployment, disarmament. We have to swing from worshipping Christ to serving man. Fascinating. Robert Runcie, a liberal Catholic, says this newspaper article, developed Canterbury's quasi-patriarchal role by frequent visits overseas. As the first archbishop to propose an ecumenical primacy for Rome, he welcomed Pope John Paul II on the first ever papal visit to Canterbury Cathedral. Pope, you are the head. Who is he supposed to say is the head? Christ. But even according to their own statute, the Queen is the head. So, Queen, this crown sits lightly upon your head. It is subject only to your obedience to the crown. And here he said, well, this is like an engagement ring, the official announcement. Let's sign our agreements, Runcie and the Pope. And new Archbishop of Canterbury, show who's boss, kneel, kiss. We all believed the Queen was the crown. She was the defender of the faith. Well, she has a problem now, and so has her son. He has to become defender of faith because Rome has swallowed every religion in her grasp. And the modern Pope and the modern Archbishop of Canterbury, he's really managed to do things. He's really managed to rock the boat. He's opened the floodgates for homosexuality. He's opened the floodgates for all of these issues. And he's strong on Christian-Muslim dialogue. And he says, what we need is a little bit of Sharia law in England. In other words, let's get a little bit of Muslim law into British law. Woo, there was a mighty furor, as the Archbishop said something like that. But our Bonnie Prince doesn't seem to mind to put on Muslim regalia. This is fascinating stuff. Now let's go to the royalty in the world and the royalty of the United States. Well, here is Cardinal Egan. And who is he? He is the leading Knight of Malta cardinal in the United States, and he's always the Bishop of New York. So the one who has that seat in New York, he is the head of the Knight Malters in the United States. Who is he subservient to? Well, his Grand Master and, of course, to the Pope. Here he is showing that subservience. Now, who likes to titillate with him? Oh, Hillary. Hillary is with Cardinal Egan. Tony Blair, who has become Catholic, with Cardinal Egan. Well, Prince Bush and Prince Gore are also royal, of course, and titillating with Cardinal Egan. Very solemn, the two of them together. And he doesn't mind shaking the hands of the Templars either, as they take their common oaths. Isn't this interesting stuff? Oh, and there is Bush Sr., and here is Knight of Malta, Giuliani. They're all there, Giuliani, whatever. Well, what about Prince Obama, or is he Prince Obama? We've just experienced an amazing presidential election, and there is no doubt that Obama is a charming man and has had a great impact on the world. What about Prince Obama? Well, if you look at Burke's peerage, then it seems that the same applies to Obama as to all the other presidents since Washington. Burke's peerage, London, every presidential election in America since and including George Washington in 1789 to Bill Clinton has been won by the candidate with the most British and French royal genes. Of the 42 presidents to Clinton, 33 have been related to two people, Alfred the Great, King of England, and Charlemagne. 19 of them are related to England's Edward III, who has 2,000 blood connections to Prince Charles. And then this amazing statement from the book Astrotheology and Sidereal Mythology. The Americans have always been owned and governed by the same royal families of Britain and Europe that conventional history states as being amongst those defeated during the wars of so-called independence. You will recall, however, that the crown does really not own the crown. The crown is the Templar crown, as we have seen. So would this mean that every single one of these presidents has secretly been controlled by the crown, and that the Knights of Malta is actually in this power position, even there, even with the present President of the United States? Well, here's an interesting article from the Telegraph. McCain and Obama share royal lineage. This is from 2008. John McCain, the Republican presidential contender, and Barack Obama, his Democrat rival, are both descended from the same Scottish king, it has been claimed. According to research by an American genealogist, they share a common bloodline that can be traced to William I of Scotland or William the Lion. It was disclosed last year that Mr. Obama was a descendant of the monarch who ruled Scotland from 1165 to 1214. And his background and upbringing spans the globe. He was born in Hawaii. We know the story. So here is another source which verifies the bloodline connection. So another website talks about this one happy family. And again, they refer to the King of Scotland and Henry II of England. He's related to at least 6 U.S. presidents: Jimmy Carter, half 7th cousins, 3 times removed; Harry Truman, 7th cousin, 3 times removed; the 2 George Bushes, 10th cousins, once and twice removed; Woodrow Wilson. He's also the 9th cousin, once removed, of Vice President Dick Cheney. I was watching one of his speeches, and he actually spoke about his cousin Cheney in the White House. So he's fully aware of these bloodlines. So he fits into the scenario. But does he have the same connections as all the others? Is he subject to the Knights of Malta? He's a charming man. We have to ask ourselves these questions. Here is a report from the Catholic News Service. Pope sends congratulatory message to Obama, November 6, 2008. He says he assured him of his prayers that God would help him with his high responsibilities for his country and for his international community, Father Lombardi said. The Pope also prayed that the blessing of God would sustain him and the American people, so that with all people of goodwill they could build a world of peace, solidarity, and justice. This is the first time in the history of the United States that a president has received such a powerful blessing from a pope. And working towards this one solidarity, Are we on the road to the final events predicted in the Bible? Amazingly, there are people on all sides of the divide. Some are saying, is Obama the Antichrist? Well, that's the same. They were asking about Prince Charles. Of course, we know the answer to that. He is not one that can be regarded as an Antichrist or the Antichrist, because the papacy fills that role and it fits it like one of Chubb's keys, and it cannot be moved. This is astounding. Here we have the head of the Knights of Malta in the United States, Cardinal Egan, and here he is in deep discussion with both the candidates to the presidential election, McCain and Obama. They both share the bloodlines. They are both knights, and they are both subject to this crown order. So nothing has really changed, and whether the one would control America or the other is really quite incidental.